Today's learning target is I can find the area of parallelograms, triangles, and trapezoids. Today we're going to be finding the area of some different polygons. Now, I know you've talked about area in previous years. Just a reminder, area is how many square units cover something. So here's an example of how that might be helpful. If you were to buy paint, and you bought a gallon of paint, if that gallon of paint said that it covers 400 feet, okay, you wouldn't really know how much paint, how much that would actually cover. Okay, so it covers 400 feet. Does that mean 400 feet if you make a strip that's a foot wide, or if it's 400 feet if you make that strip 5 feet wide? You wouldn't know how much paint it covers. But a typical gallon of paint covers 400 square feet. So what that means is you can take a square, that's a foot on each side, and a gallon of paint would cover about 400 of those squares. So then you can figure out what the area is of your wall. You'll know if you have enough paint. Now let's take a look at how we find the area of a parallelogram. So here is an example of a parallelogram right here. Okay, now this example here shows us what happens if we cut this parallelogram and take this side right here and move it to the other side. So taking this and moving it here. Now you notice if you do that and you stick those together, you get a rectangle. And you probably remember from years past that the area of a rectangle is equal to the length times the width. Now the area of a parallelogram, the formula for that's going to be similar. We're going to take the base times the height. Okay, here's where you have to be careful here. Though we don't want to take the height as this measurement. When we measure height, we go straight up and down. Okay, so, and the reason we do that is we can see if we take off this corner piece and put it over here, okay, then the height becomes this edge here, which is and the length, and the base stays the same there, that's the length. So our formula is the base times the height. So let's take a look at how this would look if I wanted to find the area of this parallelogram. Now, I added an extra number in here just so I could show you something. When we look at this, you see this little dotted line here. It shows that this is a straight up and down. It makes a 90-degree angle. Okay, so my formula is area of a parallelogram equals base times height. Okay, I see my base here is 6.2 centimeters, and now my height. Now remember, this is not my height. This is the length of this diagonal. I want the straight up and down. So here's my height. So I'm going to take 7.5. When I solve that, I get the area equals 46.5. And remember, your label anytime for area is going to be whatever units we're using. We're using centimeters, and we have to have the squared sign because they're squares. So let's take a look at how we find the area of a triangle. So here we have a triangle. Now I've included another triangle, and you can see that's an identical match. I just copied it here. Okay. Now I'm going to flip this triangle upside down and watch what happens. Now let's move that triangle right over there and take a look at what we've made. We've made a parallelogram there. Now we know from what we just learned that the area of a parallelogram is the base times the height. Right? But keep in mind, this parallelogram is really the two triangles. So if I take that triangle away, okay, now I'm left with my original triangle, and so now I'm left with half of the parallelogram. So my formula for the area of a triangle is 1/2 of the base times the height. Now remember, again, the height is straight up and down, so we need that measurement right here. Okay, we don't use this measurement or this measurement. Okay, here's our base right there, and our height would be right here. So here we have a triangle, okay, and I'm going to use my formula, 1/2 the base times the height, and now I can just plug in my numbers. So I have 1/2 of, okay, it's going to be 2 times 10. I can write it this way. I could do 1/2 of 2 first if I wanted to. I'm just going to do it this way. 2 times 10 is 20. and I know that 1/2 of that is 10. So I'm going to get 10. Now remember, it's area again, so I'm dealing with, in this case, centimeters squared. All right, let's take a look at how we would find the area of a trapezoid here. So here's our trapezoid, and we can see this trapezoid has a height of 4 centimeters. It was not very easy to draw a straight line on this, so forgive me for that. And then we have one base here. The bottom base is 8 centimeters. The top base is 5 centimeters. Now we've talked about how to find the area of a parallelogram, okay, and that's fairly easy. So if you remember, the area of a parallelogram is just the base times the height. So keep that in mind. We're going to use that here in just a minute. So what I've done here is I've created a duplicate of this trapezoid. You can see it's exactly the same. Now I'm going to flip this over so that I can create a parallelogram. Alright, so there I flipped it. The numbers flipped as well, but you get the sense of it. There, when I put that together, now you can see I've got a parallelogram. So now, look at my formula, my base times my height. My height for my parallelogram here is 4 centimeters. So I'm going to put that in here, so that's 4 for my height. Now, my base, take a look at what happened to my base when I flipped that. So I had my base here, but now I created the other one when I flipped it, so I also have this base. So I'm taking for this one, it's going to be the 8 plus the 5 that I'm going to have to do first, and then I'm going to need to times that by the 4. So my height is 4 centimeters, my base is 8 centimeters plus 5 centimeters. Now, if I solved this, okay, the area for my parallelogram would be 52 square centimeters. Okay, but keep in mind, this trapezoid was really only half of the parallelogram, right? So to find the area, I'm going to do the exact same thing that I just did, but I'm going to take a half of it. So I'm going to put 1/2 of 52, which would be 26. So the area of this trapezoid is 26 centimeters squared. And then this one would also be 26 centimeters squared, which is why when we put them together, the area would be 52. So the area of a trapezoid, so the area is going to equal 1/2 of the height times the base 1 and the base 2. So here's base 1 plus base 2. And the reason is because when we flip it, base 2 ends up right here, right? So we were taking a half of the parallelogram formula, which was the base, right here, the base, sorry, times the height. Okay, so the area of a trapezoid is going to be basically the height, right here, times the two bases, and then we're going to take half of it. So I know this formula is going to be new for you. So you might have to rewatch that a little bit or pause that, go back, pause it, and stop, and just make some sense of it.